Good afternoon. My name is Jim Conlan from RCB Radio Sport, West Clare, live at 92.5 and 94.8 FM and online at www.rcb.ie. In our first part of our build-up now to the Ladies Senior Football Championship, a three-part series. For the first part, we're delighted to be joined by Galway Senior Intercounty star Tracey Leonard. Galway had a productive last year, 2019, reaching the All-Ireland final. Sadly, it wasn't their day, and they're back this year to make amends. But Tracey, I suppose, first of all, your profession, you work as a nurse in Galway. The COVID-19, I suppose, it hit homes more to you more than anyone, I suppose, seeing it up close and first hand. And I suppose when it all broke out and once the league football sort of ceased at the moment, did you think we'd see any football at all in 2020? And are you just delighted to be back, obviously playing, first of all, club and then playing intercounty?
If I'm honest, Jim, I probably didn't see us playing any football at all this year. I think once kind of, as you said, the league ceased and I think COVID took over. It was probably different times in the hospital and I was redeployed to doing the testing and as I said, it was surreal. It was just different times. But I think, to be fair to Ireland and, we did get through it and I suppose inevitably there was going to be a second surge, I suppose, which probably happened at the minute. But no, look, I think when we heard that, the club scene was going to go back and then we got a date for the intercounty, it was great to have something to look forward to. And I suppose with having the club ran off the club in over, your 4 to 6 weeks, I think it's something that hopefully they'll look at going forward into next year, because I think it was really, especially for our own club here in Carfin, I suppose I never did as much training with the club as I did this year. And I think it's quite good for the club that, that they have their county players available to them, which I think, I really got to know some of our club players that I would have played along, but probably not known them personally as well as I've known them since COVID has happened and we trained a lot more together. So I think something like the way the club championship was run off this year is definitely something they should look at moving forward. It was really productive.
So Tracey, would you be advocating a sort of a split season then in terms of club and then intercounty run off the club? But I suppose in that sense, would you be saying say intercounty league, then a break, run club championship, and then maybe condense championship football intercounty to what we have now in October and November? And I suppose I was competing in our hurling show last night, and one of the things was suggested that obviously with hurling, it's probably in winter conditions, it's going to affect the game. But I suppose in terms of ladies football, I suppose obviously your club, you want the best sort of conditions, but you're well averse now. You're a seasoned intercounty player of playing league games in sort of the dyers of January and February sort of weather. So I suppose playing intercounty championship games, I suppose in the back end of the tail season, September and October, is that something that doesn't bother you?
I think for club and running off the club like what they did this year, I think it's important, for club players, I think in order to, I think, keep your numbers in the club, and in particular when you're dealing with ladies, numbers can be quite hard to keep. And I think if it's a thing that you're going to look at running off a club championship in 4 to 6 weeks, I think you may increase the numbers that are involved in the club, because I think a lot of players see it as a bit too much of a commitment if it's going to be, if the club in another year would have ran from probably maybe February or March on until maybe this weekend, and that's a long couple of months for a club player to commit to it. I suppose we're probably used to the commitment with playing county, and you're used to going back November, December and following right through to September. So I just think it's something that they could look at, maybe, as you said, run off the league with county, then focus back to club with championship. And I think it's definitely condensing it down. I think the commitment, you may get more commitment from girls there, and we may not lose as many players as we are losing. I definitely see it in our club anyway, that the amount of players that we're losing, and I think it could be down to commitment, that it's seen as a lot of commitment for a few months. So I definitely think it's worth giving it a lash. But again, I suppose the decision isn't going to lie with me.
I suppose, Tracy, you mentioned there being back with your club and getting to train with young girls. I suppose young girls at 16 or 17. And I suppose you're so much involved in the intercounty scene, I suppose, with the Galway senior ladies footballers. It's probably a profession upon a profession in terms of your own job as well, making, I suppose, maybe three nights a week probably commitment to even build up to championship even more with sort of team meetings as well. So I suppose to have time to know what's coming up underage in your club, and sort of, I suppose it's very, what I would say, you wouldn't be as well informed unless you're present or involved in your sort of club. I suppose Corofin is a big sort of catchment sort of area as well. So I suppose this year, I suppose you got to know an awful lot of the younger crew, but also I suppose they got an awful lot of time to train with you and take on a bit of advice from you and stuff like that, which probably, as you said, they might have only in the past seen you 2 weeks before the first championship game.
100%, Jim. Like I said, yeah, from the outset, like I don't think I've ever trained as much with the club as I did this year, and I actually really enjoyed it. Like getting to know younger girls in the club and getting to know like the underage that's coming through there. And it was even, I suppose, one Saturday, I think it was last Saturday morning, I went up to involved in a minor under 16 and minors training group. Like I don't know when before I would have had, I won't even say time, but when I would have been at the likes of that, and I really enjoyed it because I personally probably last year didn't know some of the girls in the club, and I think what I used to see is it would take that a particular girl to come into the county setup from my own club for me to get to know her, because I suppose when you're going county, you're probably carpooling with your club girls, and it's only through that you kind of get to know your club girl that well. And I suppose this year with COVID and being, I was 3 nights a week training with Corofin, I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely something that I'd say a lot of club players, a lot of county players that were playing club this year, I'd say will echo when I say that it's definitely something that I suppose that the club benefits off, and that I think we as county players definitely benefit as well, being there with our club. And I suppose club is where you started and that, and it was nice to give so much time to the club this year, and hopefully it'll be something going forward again.
And I suppose, Tracy, lastly, before I bring you on to the championship itself, just in terms of this week, we've seen a recent spate of intercounty retirements, not only male retirements, but female retirements. The likes of Colm Kavanagh has gone from Tyrone, Peter Kelly's gone from Kildare, and they just probably said that after a long season with league and then playing a club championship that they couldn't find extra gear to go again. In terms of the Galway senior ladies footballers, from the panel that you had maybe in the league time, has everyone come back? And also for the management of the Galway senior ladies footballers, being able to observe all the league games, was there players that probably weren't in contention for the panel that are suddenly drafted in, or players are coming off a really good sort of championship and intermediate or senior championship with their clubs that have propelled themselves right into maybe the thoughts of the starting 15 that were probably down towards the lower end of the tail end of the squad come league time?
Yeah, I think it was great, for management, for the Galway management, I suppose, when the club scene was first initiated, that was going to get precedence and that started. I think it gave management a chance to go to club games, but I think it is really kind of I suppose broke us into the trainings that you're not coming back having done nothing. Like the club scene in Galway was pretty competitive. We had 3 or 4 rounds in the group stages, and then it went on to semi-finals. So girls were getting games that I suppose if it was just straight into county and league games, girls mightn't have been getting the volume of games that they have got. And I think it has stood to us, even just back the last few weeks. I think the sharpness is up, the intensity is up. So it is great to be back in with the county setup. Yes, there has been girls, I suppose, called in from their club games that have caught the eye of management. So it's great that there's a few more faces in to freshen up the squad. And I think it is always good, and it's very positive to see new faces coming into a setup.
Yeah, I suppose, Tracy, I'll bring you on to the intercounty scene now. And the first round will commence on the 31st of October, and November the 1st, the Saturday, the Sunday. You're in Group 2, you're in with Tipperary and Monaghan. I suppose the first clash is with Tipperary. I'll just run down the other groups. Group 1, we've Cork, Kerry and Cavan. Group 2, we've Waterford, Dublin and Donegal. And we've Group 4, Tyrone, Armagh and Mayo. So the way it's driven, that 2 teams will probably come out of each group. And those will make up the quarterfinals, I suspect. But Tracey, in terms of your first opposition, Tipperary, I suppose a team on the rise for the last few years, building on intermediate sort of success, intermediate championships, then obviously getting promoted to the top division in ladies football. And I suppose with with stars in the likes of Ashley Maloney, Ashley McCarthy, we've Ola Dwyer as well, who's played outside in Aussie rules as well. I suppose Tipperary, in terms of ladies football, it's certainly on the rise in terms of caliber and star players, and we see some of these names are up along the echelon, especially those 3 girls of ladies football throughout the country. Those 3 girls probably would make any team in the country. So Tipperary have been on the rise, a sort of steady growth, and I suppose an awful lot of key matchups. And I suppose Ashley Maloney, I suppose, is a player that takes considerable marking, and I suppose considerable a game plan to come up with strategy to curtail her influence.
For sure, Jim. I suppose Tip, we have probably had a lot of games against Tip now, like through league games and championship games, and in the group that we're in, it's definitely going to be 2 really tough games for us. But I suppose our focus turns firstly to Tip, and I suppose we know them quite well at this stage, and a very good football and strong side, and we definitely know we'll have to have our game face on come the end of October, the 1st of November. As you've mentioned, there's a lot of household names in Tip that will need marking. But I suppose that's up to our management and hopefully getting matchups right on the day. But I suppose all we can do right now is prepare, and I suppose each evening we're going training, and that's our focus is towards Tip. And we won't be looking any further against them, because as such, if we don't turn up against Tip, I think they'll show us how to play football, because they're a very good football inside, winning intermediate twice now at this stage. It's nothing to be it'll definitely be a good battle between them.
I suppose, Tracey, if there was a form guide to go on past in the last 2 years, you would probably say naturally Galway getting to the All-Ireland ladies football final last year, they would be favourites in the group. But speaking to Emer there yesterday in relation to Camogie, all form goes out the window in terms of this championship, because there's no form to go on, because the last time most teams would have played a competitive match was 5-6 months ago. So every team is starting from scratch. There's going to be some teams that are going to come up with game plans. Obviously, the weather conditions of that is obviously going to affect. Some teams are probably more suited to winter style football than summer style football, and physique and physicality is going to obviously take its role as well. So I suppose it probably evens up the playing field an awful lot of much in terms of this idea of teams being outright favourites. It goes out the window, because there's no form. There's no form guide. You can't say, well, this team has been motoring well, it's going well as a unit, because obviously the players, you mentioned you play with club, but you haven't played as a county unit in 6 months. So obviously it's going to take a while to get used to playing together as a county side again. So I suppose in that sense, it's very much the way this is drawn with the 3 teams. It's very cutthroat. I mean, lose your first game and you're facing a landmine to try and obviously get through. Obviously then the team that wins the first game is savage momentum, and obviously going into that final round, then obviously they know what's the prize from. You lose the first game, pressure is on straight away, and obviously then it means more demands of a team, and you'll probably see some favourite teams and some teams are expected to do well to fall by the wayside. So I suppose complacency is the be all and end all to try and guard against that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there, Jim. Like, us getting to the All-Ireland final last year was great, but like this is a new year, absolutely stands for nothing. I think if I think correctly back to our first league game against Waterford, before COVID, I think, we really got a rap on the knuckles and brought us down to grassroots level again. Like, complacency could be a huge thing going into any game, and it's a label that I don't really like, when teams say, oh yeah, you could be favoured in that group. Like, it's a total different time of the year for teams playing. It comes down to, I think, us being able to control what we can control, and I suppose that's bringing our team performance, bringing our work rate, our communication, all these stuff that, I suppose that we'd built on the last few years, but it absolutely stands for nothing. And I think our girls are well in tuned in that, and I think the real eye opener to us, I suppose, was Waterford this year in our first league game, in Carfin, that I think we probably just came off the back of an All-Ireland and just thought that, we probably just had to tug out. But I think that kind of has stayed with a good lot of us that played that day. And I think I just hope that probably won't come and happen when we turn up for a tip and tug out that day. But I really think the girls will be well screwed on, because we have few training sessions. And I think while we're there, we have to make the most of it and, really work on what we need to work on. And as you said, complacency is a big thing, but I just hope that our girls will be well screwed on, because as I said, I really see it as a knockout championship. So if you really don't win your first game, you could be in a lot of bother. So I think it's going to be a real ding dong battle come the end of October, 1st November, with the first round of games going ahead.
Yeah, and you mentioned that, I suppose, only a few sort of weeks training. I suppose in terms of challenge games as well, I suppose with the whole COVID situation, it makes it nearly virtually impossible if counties are lucky enough to get the neighbouring county in for a challenge match. All well and good, but obviously to try and probably get a top contender like Dublin with the whole COVID thing is a no-go. So obviously some teams might get a challenge match. Other teams are probably relying within the strength of their own intercounty squad to have 15 versus 15 in-house sort of training games, and that's what they're going on. But I noticed, Tracey, you have a break between the first round and the last round. The two other teams, Tip and Monaghan, are out the 7th and the 8th of November. You're out again on the final rounds, the 14th and the 15th. So I suppose if you are victorious in the first round, it probably gives you that opportunity to, on that weekend, obviously, or within that space of time, for your management to pencil in a game against another team from the groups of three that aren't playing that weekend. I suppose the COVID situation will depend on that, but to play consistently game in and game out and to have a sort of, to carry on momentum, I suppose you will probably want that game in between that, because just for example, if you're victorious against Tipperary, but then Monaghan come along and beat Tipperary, then probably Monaghan have that bit of bounce going into the last game while you have that bit of layoff. So it's important you probably try and manage that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose that's probably going to be a management issue again. But I think, our focus is very much, the last weekend in October, first weekend in November. And, we're looking no further than that. But as I said, it's totally going to be a management decision what they do on that weekend. But, I think, these training sessions leading up to it are going to be very important for us, that we're well tuned in, because you don't want a situation of, looking back on the few weeks and having missed out on any sessions or anything like that. So, I think our focus is just strictly on the end of October, 1st of November.
Yeah, and we just mentioned about the other team, Monaghan, in the group. They bring that sort of northern mentality, a physical element to their game, and I suppose girls that are well able to play, but also girls that probably like to build the ball up in phases and work it out and put the ball through the hands. So a very different style of football Monaghan played in Tipperary. Obviously, well good, I like Tipperary, well good to take the scores. So you're coming up against two different styles in your group as well, Tracey. So your first game is going to be very different to your last game as well. So obviously, if you come off a good result, that probably means nothing, given that the two teams play a real different contrasting style of football. I know you have your own game plan. Your game plan would be free flowing, I suppose, like Tipperary as well, which probably end up as a shootout. But Monaghan will come with a resolute defensive structure, play on the transition, sort of counter-attacking football. So that brings its challenges as well. So it's probably a different sort of preparation for them, I imagine.
Yeah, Jim, it does. I suppose Monaghan, another great football inside, and will be another good battle for us, as you said. Played probably different style of football, but look, it's probably no harm to get two different style of games anyway, and you're probably just preparing for hopefully teams that you may come up against that play a different style of football. But I suppose it's just the nature of the game that I suppose sides play a different style of football, and it's going to be great to get two really good teams. We're going to Tip and then Monaghan, but they're as you said, two different style of games, but really looking forward to them, and I suppose hopefully come out the good side of it.
Yeah, and I suppose, Tracey, lastly, if you do progress out of the group, more than likely we're looking at quarterfinals, semi-finals in the November, probably start of December. You're probably looking at semi-final the second week of December, probably a final probably straight after that. So obviously as the championship will go on, I imagine, now we don't know the weather conditions here in Ireland, and we don't know what COVID will bring in the future, but it's fair to say that probably conditions will deteriorate in terms of pitches and playing standards as the competition goes on. I suppose obviously you come the semi-finals and finals, you probably get top class facilities and top class pitches, but the weather mightn't be the greatest for it. So that probably evens it up as well. But the prospect of playing an All-Ireland final in the middle of December, it's a very strange and sort of surreal sort of element to that. And I suppose, how do you feel about that, first of all? I suppose it's something you would never probably see in your lifetime. And then I suppose the All-Ireland final is on December. I imagine then you're probably looking at maybe January off and then back again in February.
For sure, Jim. I suppose it's only the other day I was mentioning, it's probably usually this time of the year that we're usually finished, and it's a different time of the year. I supposed to be going out training in these evenings, and I suppose as you mentioned there, weather is probably not going to be the best. We're heading into the winter months, and pitches are going to be hard got, and ground is going to be a bit different than we're used to. But look, I think the way I have to look at it is, I suppose it's great to be able to tug out on an autumn or winter even and go off training. I just probably see from my job point of view that there's so many sick people in hospitals that can't go out and play in that. So I think we have to be privileged that.
Is it a stress reliever for you, Tracey, to be able to see that environment? I know where you're working, you have to see probably some bad sights, I imagine, and some people coming in with obviously the situation. It can be very stressful, and there's obviously that personal human touch. Is it a get out of day-to-day life, escape from reality for you to be able to go off and play the football and maybe take your mind off the work environment that you have to see on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, Jim, what adds to it as well was, getting to see all your friends again and all the girls. That I think it's great to be able to switch off for a few hours and go and do something that you really love, and that, you have friends there that, are have your back at any stage. And it's great to be able to go off any evening and put on your boots and go training. So I think any day you can tug out, and I suppose wear your county jersey. Again, it's not everyone gets opportunity to wear a county jersey. So I think there has to be an element of pride there as well, and to wear that jersey and to give it everything while you're in it. So I think any day, whatever date it is, I think we're happy to tug out and give it our best.
Yeah, on that note, Tracey Leonard, I hope it's a very productive year for you in terms of Galway ladies football. Thanks for showcasing the Galway situation for the first round, and our look ahead to the ladies senior footballing championships. And I suppose, Tracey, the goal obviously is you got to the bottom step in 2019. I suppose you want to get to the top step in 2020, and I suppose to do that you have to take down a few big guns, but no better team. And Tracey, best of luck to you and Galway senior ladies footballers.
Thanks very much, Jim.